WNYC Studios is supported by Grubhub. Sometimes getting to a so-called convenience store isn't actually very convenient. But now Grubhub delivers from local convenience stores. Whether you're in the market for snacks, paper towels, or drinks, Grubhub delivers them right from the convenience store to your door.
It can make a singer go silent and keep a boy from growing tall. Stress. On Radiolab. Listen wherever you get podcasts.
I'm Melissa Harris-Perry, and this is The Takeaway. As we await the Supreme Court's decision on the constitutionality of Mississippi's 15-week abortion ban, individual states continue to restrict access. Florida recently approved a 15-week ban, and Idaho and Oklahoma are poised to pass 6-week abortion bans, similar to the one in Texas. These laws have already had real effects on the health of women and raised alarm about the future of reproductive justice and women's capacity for self-determination, issues that are central to a new play entitled Billboard.
My name is Natalie Moore, author of The Billboard and reporter at WBEZ Chicago.
Natalie Moore's play is fictional, but it's based on real events whose consequences are now playing out in state houses and at the Supreme Court. So when I sat down with Natalie to talk about Billboard, I started by asking her what she thought when she first read Professor Imani Perry's foreword to the play, a foreword that likens the play to some of America's greatest playwrights, including Lorraine Hansberry.
My mouth dropped. I was honored that Imani even had the time to read it. And when I read that, I'm a Chicago native. Of course, Lorraine Hansberry means so much to me as a Black female writer on the South Side, and her lived experience. I wouldn't say it's similar to mine, but just the housing segregation that I have lived, which was different, but still within the same milieu. It was, it took my breath away.
Yeah, it was really lovely, and I like a good foreword. Now, let's get into the text itself. So this play, and I read it as text rather than seeing it performed, although I'm excited to know that it's going to be performed. When will we be able to see it on stage for the first time?
It will have its world premiere in Chicago. The dates are June 23rd through July 17th, and it's being produced by 16th Street Theater.
So until then, we can read it as text. And in reading it as text, let's just kind of dive into this and walk through it a bit. Talk to me about the real life events, the actual billboards that inspired this play.
My daily journalism often inspires my outside writing. And about 10 years ago, there was an anti-Black woman, anti-abortion billboard that popped up in Chicago, and I covered it. And it didn't get a lot of traction in the city. It wasn't, people protested against it, but it didn't make any ripple effect. Fast forward many years later, this campaign has gone on in cities all over the country, demonizing Black women, saying things like the most dangerous place for a Black child is his mother's womb. And one went up in Dallas, and then a Black women's health clinic in Dallas put up their own billboard affirming abortion as healthcare. And it was controversial because it had women on the billboard smiling. And I think the way we talk about abortion in this country is that this is a very somber, serious matter, and it's private. And we've also seen in recent years people shouting their abortion stories, trying to get rid of the stigma. And that's what I believe that billboard was trying to do. And so with this play, I wanted to tease out some of those themes.
Yeah, and you absolutely bring us into that and so much more. I want to go to actually, let's just literally go to the corner. Let's go to the corner of 59th and Halsted, which is the corner in your play where both of these billboards that are at the center of the play are displayed. Can you tell us about 59th and Halsted in Chicago?
That is in the Inglewood neighborhood, which is a virtually all Black neighborhood that has suffered from decades of disinvestment. You see that with vacant lots, with boarded up buildings. The foreclosure crisis is still haunting the neighborhood. But there are Block clubs in Inglewood. There are artists there that are there. There are people who are trying to beautify their community. So we often tend to look at Black spaces through a deficit lens, as only poverty-stricken. And there's much more complexity to that. And so setting a play in Chicago, I couldn't resist putting politics in it, the Chicago way. So there's a character, Demetrius Drew, who is running for city council, and he puts up one of these anti-Black women, anti-abortion billboards on that corner. There happens to be a fictional Black women's health clinic that also does reproductive work, including abortion. And they decide that they want to shake things up and put up their own billboard. And this is a billboard that's affirming self-care. And some people thought it looked like women at brunch with bottomless mimosas. And that really bothered people, even those who would have identified as pro-choice.
And it's fascinating because, as you point out, you couldn't sort of help putting politics in it. It's, after all, Chicago. People sometimes miss that the Windy is about the politics, not about the weather. I want to go, though, to this core of this linkage that is made by the character who is running for office, this Demetrius character, who makes a claim linking gentrification to abortion, to this kind of extermination of Black communities. Is this rooted in real conversations that you have witnessed?
Yes, there are people who believe that abortion does target Black women, and it is for Black women to abort babies to lessen our numbers racially, and that you don't see pro-abortion billboards in white neighborhoods. There is some ugly history to Margaret Sanger, founder of Planned Parenthood, and eugenics, although, I mean, we don't have time to get into all of that. I do think that some of it is overstated if you really go back and read some of her writing, and even how W.E.B. Du Bois was in some of those conversations. But largely, you know, in a general sense, there is some concern that abortion is about exterminating Black families. And so that comes up in the play. And also because of so much disinvestment in Inglewood, this character running for city council is saying, look, I can transform this neighborhood. I have all the answers for investment and promoting Black-owned businesses. And he's also a provocateur. So he says, you know what? Here's a neighborhood that has had severe population loss over the decades. And I'm going to put up this billboard to try to make these linkages. As tenuous as they may be, he does get some, he does have an amen corner.
So there are at least three very different, but I think in many ways representative abortion stories that emerge very naturally in the context of the play. It's not like, I think very much like the point you're making about trying to reclaim narrative. They don't sit necessarily at the center of the play as like a great moral angst around these stories. But we just learn of three characters, all Black women of different ages, all of whom have chosen abortion for different reasons. And I don't want to give too much away here because I think those stories are really important when they show up. But talk to me a bit about sort of as you were writing. Obviously, there are as many different abortion stories as there are women who have chosen abortion. These three, though, are again, in many ways, I think, representative of the kinds of reasons that women make this choice. How did you decide sort of which characters to give these to, how to draw them out in the context of the play and the action?
Thought about that a lot because I couldn't do a play about abortion and not have any abortion story in it. And so that to me was is a through line throughout the text where these women who all had different reasons and they share their story. Now, I have to admit, in the first writing phases, they were much longer monologues. And in the workshopping, it's like, okay, let's tone this down, not because of the content, but how you're balancing this with the writing. But I wanted all of these women to tell their stories and for them to be very different, because like you said, there is no single abortion story. And there is a critique that I'm making there about how popular culture, or even a lot of television or movies, depict abortion, this downtrodden person, or maybe they can't afford a child. And sometimes people just don't want to be pregnant. And I mentioned the characters talk in the play about the 1990s, where it was keep abortion safe, legal, and rare, and how that rare tagline was also a stigma that was there, that you have to be justified in your reason for having an abortion. But the justification comes from the individual who is making that choice, not society, not others.
I am not a fan of the concept of self-care. For some of the reasons, actually, that some of your characters talk about in the book, that self-care gets described in ways that are very commercial, that it's about, get a manicure, take a bubble bath, like these very, like you go out and buy things to care for yourself. You are really disrupting that idea of self-care in this play. Tell me more about that decision. Not only are you disrupting our understandings about abortion, not only are you disrupting our understandings about politics, but you went ahead and went for the self-care as well.
And I mean, I'm all for self-care, however that looks for you, but it does tend to be a commercialized capitalistic way. And, let's be clear, I love going to the spa. That is just one aspect of taking care of myself, but we have to look at healthcare and, whether that's going to a primary care doctor or seeing a mental health professional. And in some instances, having an abortion is a woman taking care of herself. And there's, a message in there too, that a character says that Black women can't take care of their families if they can't take care of themselves. And so there is a heavy scene in there about self-care. And I think that one of the characters has to concede, okay, you're right. How has self-care been framed? Really kind of as a upper middle class pursuit.
I'll say that for me, part of my pushback against self-care is the idea that we need collective care, we need squad care, we need our girls to have our backs. And that's another piece that you give us here is there are moments when in the challenging realities that emerge in the play, particularly sort of those classic strong Black woman characters, professional, capable, smart, self-reliant, have to turn to other women, sometimes even younger women, like almost girls, right? You have one character who's right on that 19 to 20-year-old transition from girlhood to womanhood, and yet becomes one of the wisest characters in the play. Talk to me a little bit about your decision to have Black women show up in sisterhood for each other in this play.
Well, Melissa, I do think about your work too on the myth of I've heard you lecture about this when you were in Chicago. And so yes, most Black women like to be told that they are strong, but they also know that there are cracks that are there and that they need support. And the character Kayla, who you're referring to, the young woman, in some of the early readings, she has become a favorite among the readers because, in the workshopping, because she is, I don't want to just say wise beyond her years, but I wanted to create a character who was young and smart, who people would listen to. She's a around the way girl. She's not someone who has started a long education journey. She probably will, but she brings life experience, neighborhood experience. And I wanted to play off of the intergenerational aspect, and people, and the characters don't look down on her. It's not like she's behind the scenes and everyone ignored her and she emerges. She is a voice of reason and intellect throughout.
I enjoy her so much. I am not surprised that she has emerged as a favorite. She certainly caught my heart from the beginning. All right, last question. Any chance that we're going to get a chance to see the Billboard on Broadway?
Ooh, you know what, Melissa, put it out there. I'm going to claim it. I would love that. I would, so any producers out there listening, or anyone who wants to make a trek to Chicago to see the world premiere and make that happen, I am all for it.
Well, as I said, my family is hosting, on my dad's side, is hosting our family reunion in Chicago this year. So for sure, I think we are going to be putting the Billboard on our list of things that we are doing this summer. Natalie Moore is the author of the new book, The Billboard, a play about abortion. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Melissa.
This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, an honest conversation about returning to the office.
Forced communal lunches, or the strongly suggested communal lunch. Open floor plan. Coming back to work is partially about surveillance and micromanagement, and people of color feel that in a different way. Everybody feels it, but people of color feel it in a different way.
That's the New Yorker Radio Hour from WNYC Studios. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.